senior professor. Oh, Linda's starting. Rodrigo is a senior professor at the Institute of Ecology at the UNAM and an explorer at large for the National Geographic Society. His research program focuses broadly on mammal ecology and conservation, with a strong emphasis on applied and policy-driven science. Rodrigo and his students work in diverse ecosystems from tropical rainforests to deserts to montane forest, and he currently has projects in 16 countries and on 5 continents. His research has produced well over 200 publications in journals such as Conservation Biology, Ecology, Frontiers in Ecology and Environment, Journal of Applied Ecology, Molecular Ecology, Nature, Science, Trends in Ecology, Evolution, and of course, my personal favorite, the Journal of Mammalogy. He's also published more than 50 books or book chapters. However, Rodrigo's efforts outside of academia are probably the most compelling aspect of his career, and he has become one of the world's foremost advocates for conservation issues, especially those involving bats, jaguars, bighorn sheep, and ocelots. Rodrigo is a past president of the Society for Conservation Biology, a co-chair for the Society's Animal Committee, and ambassador for the IUCN. He currently is co-chair for the IUCN Bat Specialist Group, scientific counselor of the Convention on Migratory Species, founding director of the Latin American Network for Bat Conservation, and curator of the Global South Bats Network of bat scientists from Africa, Asia, and Latin America. For his efforts, he's been awarded the Whitley Award in 2004, the Rolex Award for Enterprise in 2008, the Whitley Gold Award in 2012, and was a subject of David Attenborough's recent BBC documentary called The Batman of Mexico. And these are just the accomplishments listed on his Wikipedia page. There are many, many more. Rodrigo really is a true believer in mobilizing science and engaging as many stakeholders as possible to solve the many environmental problems facing the world, including climate change, the biodiversity crisis, and most recently, the COVID-19 pandemic. Speaking personally, I've gotten to know Rodrigo through the American Society of Mammalogists, and he's become a trusted colleague and friend. He's one of those folks that will go the extra mile to engage and mentor young scientists. But before I open the floor to Rodrigo, I want to remind everybody to use the chat for questions. We'll open up a Q&A at the end of the presentation. Rodrigo has kindly agreed to stay on a little bit longer if folks have questions. But without further ado, I'd like to turn the floor over to Rodrigo.
Well, Cody, thank you very much. Thanks a lot for this invitation. It's always wonderful to spend some time with friends and colleagues, young and old, trying to tell a few of the stories that I have lived through my life, and mostly making emphasis on the lessons that I have learned. I mean, you know, all of us who are in science, we aspire to have our science impact policy, become part of the real world, and not just live in the journals, etc. Well, the lessons that I am going to share with you today are what I have learned over the process of 30-something more years in the context of doing exactly that, doing research and then incorporating into policy and seeing the fruits of the work become a reality. So without further comments, I would like to share my screen. And here we go. And we're starting now. I have called this talk, How to Do Conservation Science, Implement It, and Not Die Trying, 30 years of work on bighorn, jaguars, and bats. Those are 3 examples that I'm going to cover today. And in this case, then, oops. The first example is going to be about jaguars, and then we're going to go on to bighorn, and then I'm going to expand a little bit more on the long-nosed bats for whatever reason that I think you'll get the reason why at the end. This is very popular, that long-nosed bat talk. So when you hear the word jaguar, your brain immediately reacts in a way in which the concept of a jaguar is really a transcultural representation of power and superiority. And we have known this across time, across space, and across cultures. Say, for example, that Dr. Cody Thompson goes by in his brand new Jaguar like that. you immediately know that there is a person of power driving that jaguar, right? Well, the same thing happened to pre-Columbian Mexicans when they saw the figure on the right, the special forces of the Aztec Empire, of the Aztec army coming at you, and you knew that your life was coming to an end. This is exactly what I mean by transcultural representation of power and superiority. And it is transtemporal as well. Unfortunately, today, the jaguar is also facing very serious challenges. In 2002, I ran the first diagnostic analysis incorporating friends and colleagues and authors on jaguars from Argentina to Mexico, and in those years, even the United States. And we knew in 2002 that the distribution of the jaguar, the range of the jaguar, was pretty much continuous from northern Mexico to northern Argentina. And then in 2017, we did the same kind of diagnostic again, and that is that book that I published in 2017, looking at what was the status of the jaguars 15 years later. In only 15 years later, from 2 or 3 populations that we had in 2002, we ended up having 32 subpopulations. And if we use the IUCN criteria to assign extinction risk to each one of those 32 subpopulations, unfortunately, we come up with a result that 31 of those 32 are either endangered or critically endangered. And only one, the one in the Amazon basin, is least concern. That, of course, means that if we put all of our eggs in one basket, we're going to keep the species as near threatened, which is as it is right now classified under the IUCN. But unfortunately, that would mean losing more than 40% of the range of the species and all but one population, right? So at this point in time, right now, I am fighting with IUCN to make them see that it's not right to put all your eggs in one basket and just say that the jaguar is near threatened. The jaguar needs to be vulnerable, especially when you look at the red data books of all of the countries in the range of the species. We all classify the species as endangered. This moved me to work with the Mexican federal government. I have been advisor to the federal government of Mexico for the last 30 years on wildlife issues. Sometimes they listen to me, sometimes they don't. In this case, they did listen to me, and we created the National Jaguar Conservation Project with the Secretary of the Environment with the objective to ensure the future of viable jaguar populations in Mexico, and with a number of lines of actions that I am going to describe a little bit, some of them. In 2006, reality came true for me. A dream came true for me, in the sense that, and I know that many biologists would share this dream. Somebody opened the door of the office of one of the wealthiest people on earth and the wealthiest Mexican on earth, who happens to like jaguars, and he breeds jaguars in captivity for fun. So I told him that Mexico could be the first country in the world to have a nationwide estimate of how many jaguars do we have. And he said, well, tell me more. I said, well, I think we can commit to define a standardized replicable method that is applied by every jaguar biologist in Mexico in the same way. And that way we're going to be able to estimate how many jaguars do we have. And that is going to be the basis for the recovery plan for the jaguar in Mexico. He liked the idea, and there we go. He gave us the money. Then we selected the initial National Jaguar Census sites. This program is linking the government with academia, with NGOs, and the landowners in the Jaguar Recovery Subcommittee, which is managed by the ministry, by the Secretary of the Environment. The funds are government and private. What you see here is after many, many battles. I don't know what's wrong with people who work with big cats, but big cats or big whales or big primates or big whatever, that their egos are humongously big. So you can imagine that in the meeting that we were supposed to come up with the protocol, with a common standardized protocol, everybody wanted to have their own protocol adopted by everyone else, and everyone else was wrong by definition. We wasted 3 days fighting and arguing, discussing, and nothing was clear. The final day of the workshop, I said, well, if we really want to have this money and turn Mexico into being the first country to have an estimate of how many jaguars do we have, we better come to an agreement. Finally, I'm telling you a 4-day long story into 5 minutes. So you can imagine the level of stress in me, but we finally were able to agree on this protocol that you're seeing here. It's basically about 100 square kilometers, divided into 3 by 3 kilometer grids like that. And in each square, 9 kilometer square grid, we're going to put 3 stations, 3 camera trap stations. And in addition, we're going to put in every other square one of these little squares that is enlarged on the left right here, that is basically to look at the relative abundance of the prey of the jaguar, right? So with this protocol, we were able to identify the numbers of jaguars. You know, the jaguars are uniquely marked with their blotches on their skin, on their fur, and that helps us identify individuals and therefore have an estimate of how many jaguars do we have here. Then we selected the different places. You can see there that the blue circles were the first year of National Jaguar Census, the yellow circles the second year. Between the 2 years, we covered most of the range of the species, and then we just expanded on the basis of remote sensing and satellite images, taking into account what was the status of the habitat in those areas. We just expanded, we just extrapolated the numbers that we have taken from the actual sites. And you can see that we have a lot of sites that we did. So with that, some of the results show that, of course, we still have several minimum viable populations from Sonora and Sinaloa in northern Mexico to Chiapas and the Yucatan Peninsula in the south. And we found surprisingly large populations in regions that we never expected to have large populations, like in Sonora. Actually, that population in Sonora was the source for your very rarely seen jaguars in the United States. Unfortunately, I have to report the extinction of the jaguar in your country, because the last jaguar that we had notice of died last year in Arizona, and with the wall going now over those areas, there is absolutely no chance for a jaguar to pass. So my friends, I am sorry, but you have no jaguars in your country. We also have the largest populations of the Mayan of jaguars in the Mayan rainforest of Chiapas and Campeche, and that is connected to Guatemala and Belize. So the estimated number of jaguars in Mexico, according to our most recent census, and this is twice that we've done the census in Mexico so far, and the second one just finished about 2 years ago, is 3,800 jaguars in the country. This means this is a big sigh of relief to a certain degree. Without any basis, I can tell you that those 3,800 represent about 20% of the jaguars that were in Mexico 60 years ago. So we have only 20% left. We have lost 80%. We cannot lose one more jaguar. And the jaguar is still under siege and being affected by lots and lots of different threats. One of the threats, of course, is what I call the revenge of the cattle rancher, that feel that their interests are affected by jaguars, and they go and take law in their hands, even when killing a jaguar is a federal offense punishable by jail in Mexico, but still they continue doing it. So that prompted us to turn to the government again and create this protocol of attention to conflict with wildcats on cattle depredation. What happens here is that we wanted to appease the cattle ranchers by paying back. If a jaguar killed any calf or anything, we would pay back the cost of the calf, but not just blindly. Oh, you lost a calf to jaguars, here's your money. Absolutely not. The point here is that the landowner shares the responsibility to keep the jaguar prey, the jaguar wild prey in place. So they commit to eliminate or drastically reduce hunting in their land of deer, peccary, pacas, armadillos, you name it. The point here is that they're going to stop killing those animals, because let's think for a second what happens with the jaguars. The jaguar is living peacefully there in their forest, and then humans come in and start settling the forest. The next step is that humans are going to start chopping trees down, chopping the jaguar's home down. And the next step is going to be that we also like to eat deer, we like to eat peccaries, so we start hunting peccaries and deer. And of course, that is affecting the jaguar. We are in direct competition with the jaguars. And the final step is that we bring these stupid animals who do not defend themselves, called cattle, and we put them there and we tell the jaguar, you touch them and you're dead. Well, I'm sorry, but that is not really fair for the jaguar. So we brought the landowners into this core responsibility. And if the prey populations go down because you continued hunting, we do not pay the cost of your losses. But then still, if the prey populations remain stable and still you lost a few cattle, we pay for that. At the same time, we're also working on education on the cattle management, where we're telling the landowners that, jaguars are not big enough to kill an adult cow. So it's actually the calves that are vulnerable. And unfortunately, many cattle ranchers in Mexico, they just let the cattle roam free, and the cows give birth in any month of the year. We said you need to synchronize your cows so that all of the calves are born in the same 2 or 3 months of the year. And of course, if you bring those calves into a stable at night, that for the first 3 or 4 months of the life of the calf, that is the window where they are susceptible to jaguar depredation. So that education is taking root. More and more cattle ranchers are doing that more and more. And the other thing that we're doing is that any individual who kills a jaguar at least sets a foot in jail. We're working with the judicial system in Mexico, with the judges, explaining to them that it is unfortunately very common to have people kill jaguars, and that is a federal offense. And it is a federal offense, and it is as bad as dealing with drugs. I'm sorry. If somebody's dealing with drugs, they go to jail. Well, if somebody kills a jaguar, they also go to jail. The next element in this case that we're doing is that, and stay tuned, because I think we're going to have a very big splash next year. We are going to start producing jaguar-friendly beef, in the sense that the cattle ranchers that are producing beef right now, and if they're losing some cattle to jaguar depredation, we are going to brand their meat, the meat that they send to the market, with a label saying this is a jaguar-friendly beef. And this is sending a very big message to all other producers, and of course to the consumer who wants to do something for the jaguar. Let's go to the field. This is the south of Mexico. This is the Yucatan Peninsula, the Mayan Rainforest. That in the south of the Mayan Rainforest, outside of the Yucatan Peninsula, is the Lacandon Rainforest that you can see here, the biggest chunk of Amazonian rainforest in Mexico. All of the green are different types of forest. the yellow and the other colors are disturbed habitat, and you can see in red the protected areas, the federal protected areas there. All right, so what do we need to do to protect the jaguars here and the connectivity of these jaguars? We need to learn from the boss, and the boss is a jaguar. It's not my director, it's not the head of the Ministry of the Environment or anything. So we're going to the field, capturing jaguars and deploying GPS radio collars on them to follow the movements of the jaguars all over the place. What you're seeing here are the movements of only 4 animals to have a very clear picture. In red, you see 2 females. In blue, you see 2 males. I want to call your attention to this male in the top of the screen. This animal, we have a number of locations. On the Mexican side of the border, what you see here, this is the Usumacinta River, the biggest river in Mexico that divides us from Guatemala. That is about right now, it's about a 1.5, 2 kilometer wide river that this jaguar is swimming across and visiting his Guatemalan girlfriend here. And he stays there for 3 weeks, for 4 weeks, and then he swims back across the Usumacinta River to come back to his Mexican girlfriend to prevent her from being too upset. Well, this is exactly the kind of genetic connectivity that we need to secure for the future of the jaguar in the Mayan rainforest. So as a result, we identify the movements of all of these jaguars, and we identify this area that is very critical for the jaguars to have really connectivity from the Lacandon rainforest in Mexico to the Petén in Guatemala. And now this is a proposal that is on the table of the federal government right now to create an additional reserve right here. Right now, we have worked with the local indigenous groups, the Lacandon, Chol, and Celtal groups in that area. And they have determined that this is an indigenous land, indigenous protected area to begin with. Hopefully, the federal government is going to see the need that we need to protect that area as well. So the next 50 years are going to be very critical for the fate of the jaguars. The laws must be applied for the fullest extent. We need additional political will and commitment. If you follow me in social media, you will see an incredible surprise in Instagram specifically. About 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, I posted on Instagram a Mexican peso bill, the 200 peso bill, and then the 500 peso bill. The 200 peso bill depicts the golden eagle, our national bird, and the 500 peso bill depicts the gray whale. Well, in November, so next month, the Mexican government is going to have a big announcement. And I've been working on that for 5 years now. So I'm going to be very happy, and I'm going to make a big splash of that. That is part of the environmental education that we need to convey to the people. Basically, these bills have augmented reality. The peso bill has augmented reality that you can see with your phone, but go look in Instagram, you'll see it. We need to strengthen the cattle insurance as well, and we need to incorporate lessons from other carnivores. How come leopards are in better shape and they can coexist with humans in many places in Africa and Asia, and jaguars cannot? We need to understand that. Lots and lots and more research are in the process right now to continue learning about these animals and to see what else do we need to do to secure their future. Let's move on to the next level of the talk, and we're going to talk about bighorn sheep now. This is a dramatically different ecosystem. We're talking about the Sonoran Desert. What you're seeing here is the historical distribution of the species in Mexico in the red line there. We used to have them in 6 states, but starting about 1945, 1950, we lost them from the 3 eastern states of Nuevo León, Coahuila, and Chihuahua. We lost the bighorn from all of those areas. And from 1950 to now, they had been only present in Sonora and northern Baja and southern Baja right there. Here you can see Tiburon Island, the biggest island in the Mexican territory. That island is 120,000 hectares, and it's the biggest piece of pristine Sonoran desert that is left. It is very important because of the story. In 1996, in another life, I was the first head of the wildlife department of the Mexican government, and we ran a survey of bighorn in Mexico, coming up with an estimate of between 4,500 to 7,200 bighorn in southern Baja, northern Baja, Sonora, and Tiburon Island, about 600 animals there. Well, that's Tiburon Island right there. It's 50 kilometers long, very, very close to the mainland. That is Pico Johnson. In the 70s, the Mexican federal government saw that the bighorn was really declining very drastically, very quickly. And they decided to go to Pico Johnson, capture 16 bighorn sheep, and put them as a reserve in the island. Nobody paid much attention to that population, but we were able, because of the censuses that we did starting in 95 and on, we were able to model the growth of that population. We know that in 1975, it was only 16 animals that were left, that were put in the island. And then there was a land survey that was not very helpful because, bighorn move much faster than you are. So you're counting less or you're double counting. There's lots of problems. But then starting in 95 and 96 and on, we've been doing helicopter surveys there. With those data, we've been able to construct this curve in which we were able to apply the logistic equation, looking at a carrying capacity of about 650 bighorn in the island, and an intrinsic rate of natural increase, the biggest intrinsic rate of natural increase of any bighorn population in the world, of 0.3. And that's very easy to understand because the island was completely empty of any other competitors or predators. There's no mountain lion. Coyotes and golden eagle don't take that many lambs because the ewes are very good mothers and they defend their lamb from coyotes, and very rarely did a golden eagle take a lamb. All right, the island belongs, it's one of the very few islands, Mexican islands, with an owner. And in this case, President Echeverria in the 1970s gave the title of ownership of the island to the Seri indigenous group, or CONCAC indigenous group, that you can see there. It turns out that I was able to create a program for management and conservation of bighorn sheep in Tiburon Island for the benefit of the island itself and of the Seri indigenous group. So we created the Seri Trust Fund, in which I deposited a big amount to begin with, and I am not a signatory, it's only the Seris. It's actually 12 Seri elders who have to sign every check for every peso that leaves that amount, that account. It is an international, interinstitutional, and intersectoral collaboration. I cannot tell you that I am an expert on bighorn sheep, but I am as close to an expert of bighorn sheep as Mexico has. So I joined forces with Arizona Game and Fish Department and the University of Arizona to run these surveys and do all of the analysis and everything. And then I got in touch with something called FUNOS, the Foundation for the North American Wild Sheep. I worked with the government to get 2 hunting tags, only 2 of 650 animals, 2 hunting tags. And I talked to FUNOS, I said, I'd like to auction these 2 hunting tags for the benefit of the Seri people. The entire amount is going to go to the Seri Trust Fund if you agree. And they agreed. So in 1996, we auctioned the first 2 hunting tags. Now, those of you who are hunters, think for a second, how much would you pay for the possibility to go hunting for the first time ever in Tiburon Island, 1 bighorn ram? Well, now that you have a figure, add a few zeros to that, because the first one went for $200,000 and the second one went for $195,000. Since then, the bighorn hunts have gone at about $100,000 each hunting permit, and it's only 2 a year. That's all. That's all that we're doing. So this, for the first time in their lives, in their history really, they are getting resources for their community development program. You cannot imagine what is going on in that area with the current COVID situation, but they're using some of that Bighorn money to subsidize the medical expenses that the community is having. And economic diversification of the city is promoting, and on top of that, it's the first time in 400 years that the species range is expanding. Let me tell you a bit more about that. This is Mr. George Harms on the left, who paid $195,000 the first time. And then on the second year of the auction, I asked him to please come up to the stage and say a few words about his hunt. And he said, nope, I am not going to talk. I said, whoa, did something go wrong with your hunt? He said, that's exactly what's the problem. Nothing went wrong. It was a fantastic hunt. I had an amazing time. And if I go up and talk, the price is going to go up. And I want to go back again. So I don't want to pay more. So he paid $100,000 that year. And he got what you're seeing there, which is still, even now, the world record of any desert bighorn sheep taken with bow and arrow. Came from Tiburon Island. You can see that it's Tiburon Island. All right. So it's finally now that, you know, the job of a conservation professional is to get yourself out of a job, to solve a problem and move on, solve a problem and move on, solve a problem and move on. So in this case, you can see here the Seri technical team for Bighorn and 2 of the members of my team train these Seri people to take care of the entire operation, including the surveys in helicopter, try to get the Seris into a helicopter. They didn't want to do it the first year. They didn't want to do it the second year, but by the third year, I had to fight for my own spot in the helicopter. But now it's all in their hands. I'm completely out of the picture. I'm one outsider advisor, and they sometimes come back to me saying, hey, do you think we can increase the hunting quota to 4, to 5? I said, no, you are going to kill the demand. You know, try to explain the offer and demand laws of economics. And I said, you know, if you bring it up to 4, you are going to kill the price and you're going to work 2 or 3 times more for the same amount of money. So there's really no need, no justification to ask for more than 2 and only 2. There's a Seri with an antenna following one of the bighorn that we reintroduced into Chihuahua. And there's the Seris with my students doing vegetation surveys in the island. And now the bighorn range is expanding. We have a population in Chihuahua and we have a population in Coahuila. Both populations are now celebrating hunts, very limited hunts, 2 or 3 animals every year. But finally, we have a sustaining population in Chihuahua and Coahuila after 60 years of complete absence of the species. And Seris are taking the fate in their hands. It's actually that they have now some possibility to conduct their future, to foresee their future, to manage their future, and not be dependent upon handouts from the government, things like that. Let's move to the next stage, the lesser long-nosed bat, Leptonicteris yerbabuena. The star of the show, that's a very handsome bat, as you can see there. He's completely covered with pollen, ears and forehead and everything is covered with pollen right there. This is a species that was listed in the US in 1988 and in Mexico in 1993 as threatened in Mexico and endangered in the United States after surveys that we did with the Fish and Wildlife Service and the Smithsonian back in the 80s. It's a migratory pollinator, and we started the recovery actions immediately in 1994 using this 3-pronged approach that has been very, very useful. Everything I do in conservation is using this same three-pronged approach of research, environmental education, and conservation actions that looks like this. They feed back into each other. So the research can provide the information for conservation actions to take place and for environmental education. But at the same time, environmental education is generating a lot more research questions that go back and feed back into the research, and we continue to expand the research program. And same thing with conservation actions. It's a little bit like adaptive management, that we continue to create new opportunities for synergy between the three fields. And it's been very, very helpful and very effective, very successful in this case. Let's look a little bit at what we do to recover the species. Of course, we have to survey the species in as many routes as possible. We use infrared cameras with infrared lights that you can see there. And here, this is one of the biggest colonies in the north of Mexico. That's in the Pinacate Desert, very close to the Mexico-US border. I want you to pay attention to this. Each individual bat, you will see the huge bellies of these animals. They're all pregnant females that are arriving at the maternity colony in late April, early May. They're coming from central and southern Mexico, flying up in the spring, getting there in late spring and giving birth there. So what you're seeing here is 25 years of data shrunk into a single slide. In this case, each arrow is pointing at one particular cave, one particular roost, and the color and the caliber of the arrow is telling you the order of magnitude of that colony in particular. So the pink arrows are thousands of bats, the red arrows are tens of thousands, and the one wine color, purple colored arrow up in the northwest of Mexico is the Pinacate Cave, which is the only one that has hundreds of thousands of bats every year. And also you can see here that the histograms showing the variation in the size of the colony from year to year, it's pretty stable, except in particular cases like this one here in the east of Mexico that went from 15,000 to 60,000 one year, but most of the others are very, very stable. I also want to use this opportunity to tell you that this particular cave right here, it's called Las Vegas Cave in eastern Puebla, northern Puebla, has a new colony. And I know for a fact that this is a new colony because I started going to that cave when I was 16 years old. I was already embedded in looking at bats, studying bats, and I documented that that was the cave with the largest number of species in the neotropics. 13 species of bats live in that cave. So I've been following that cave for decades. And then my students, 5 or 6 years ago, they go to that cave. I tell them, okay, it's time to go to Las Vegas and check on how many species are there. And they come back reporting that they had a colony of 5,000 lesser long-nosed bats. And I go, listen, go back and hit the books because you have no idea what you're saying. There's never been lesser long-nosed bats in that cave, and I don't think there will ever be. And they said, but Dr. Medellín, seriously, there are lesser long-nosed bats there. I said, absolutely not. It's been 40 years that not a single lesser long-nosed bat has been there. They said, well, we saw them. You want to come with us? So here I go the next weekend. I go with them there, and here I go eating my words one by one because we have a new colony of lesser long-nosed bats in that area, right? So we see stability and growth in all of the colonies there. So let's go to the cave. That's how the cave looks like from the outside, in the middle of the Pinacate Desert. Lots of lava fields there. This is what the infrared camera sees with the infrared lights. You can see that the bats are coming out like that, and it stays like that for 3 hours, 4 hours, you name it. Please keep in mind that in the case of these bats, it's only the females that migrate. Thanks to the wonderful invention of the placenta, the males stay behind. They mate in the early spring and late winter in western and southern Mexico. And then the males go bye-bye, baby, and the mothers, the females, keep going north, coming to this cave. So keep in mind that these are all pregnant and lactating females, and keep also in mind that I need to gauge the reproductive success of that particular year. Every year we have to do that. But if I go into the cave in the morning, in the day, I'm going to create a major disturbance in the females, and the females are going to drop the babies, and we don't want that. So I have to wait until the last female has left the cave, and then I walk in very carefully with a red light just to be able to see what is the reproductive success of that year. And this is what I find. Basically, it's a carpet of babies that is covering the roof of the cave like that. These are all one-day-old babies, two-day-old babies that are completely amassed. The females leave them there when they're going out to feed. Now, for a second, I'd like to invite you to think that you are one of those females and that you're going to work and you leave your baby in daycare. And then when you come back, you find this nightmare. How are you going to find out who your baby is? Well, let's look at this other video, and I want you to focus, please, on this particular baby right here. The video is going to start, and for the first 1 or 2 seconds, the babies are very peacefully sitting there, stretching their wings, looking at each other, doing nothing. And then this baby goes crazy because he knows that mom is back and he's finally out of that hellhole. So here we go. The video starts, everything is peaceful. Ah, oh, my mom is back. Finally, my mom is back. Mom, I'm over here. And the mother is coming and checking other babies. Wait. I'm not sure if that is you. Now, I want you to look at the behavior of the female. She goes down to the genitals of the baby and look at her tongue. Her tongue is flicking in and out. We don't know what she is doing. This is work in progress. We're still trying to understand what's going on. But then the mother realizes that that is her baby indeed. She lets the baby latch onto the nipple, and then there she goes with her baby. Off she goes. This happens hours and hours and hours. We have hours and hours of this behavior. We know that the baby knows for some reason that the mother is back, but we have no idea what is the reason, what is the hints, the clues that the baby is getting that the mother is back. The mother is clearly using her smell, her sense of smell, and maybe some other thing, maybe taste too, I don't know. We're still learning about that, but in the case is that they do identify each other, and we're trying to understand what is going on there. All right. When you have a colony of hundreds of thousands of bats in that area, they are feeding on the flowers of the columnar cacti, the very iconic, charismatic columnar cacti of the Southwest. Any Western movie that you've seen those columnar cacti. But instead, when you come out of the cave, this is what you see: a very barren landscape with only one columnar cactus here, one here, and that is all. Whereas if you're trying to feed hundreds of thousands of hungry mothers, you would have to have something like this, right? Well, so the next question is, where are they feeding? I'm taking you now to extreme northwestern Mexico. That is the area that I'm talking about right here in extreme northwestern Sonora. That is a protected area, the Biosphere Reserve of El Pinacate. It's a volcanic shield. You can see the volcano right here. The cave is in the southern end of the volcanic shield right here. But when you try to find where is the closest saguaro or columnar cactus forest, that is over here. And the next closest one is over here. And the distances there are 40 kilometers to the north or 50 kilometers to the northeast. For a bat that is 30 grams, this size, are they really going to be able to negotiate those distances? So income technology, this is my friend Yossi Yovel from the University of Tel Aviv in Israel. He has a double PhD on biology and engineering, and he came up with these GPS units that also has a VHF telemetry radio on board of the bat. And all of that weighs only 1.5 grams, so about 5% of the weight of the bat. And we deploy that on several bats, on 35 bats. And on top of that, it also has an ultrasonic microphone and a recorder so that we can identify, we can analyze all of the bats' echolocation calls and social calls as they fly from the roost to the feeding areas. And what we found is that these bats are really long distance flyers. This is the Mexico-US border right there. And each color is illustrating one bat. And you can see that one particular bat goes in the same direction day after day after day after day. And you can see them, they are flying across the Mexico-US border, over the Mexico-US border wall. Tell that to Mr. Trump, thank you very much. And it's actually 65 kilometers or even 130 kilometers. And the females have to come back because they have to feed the baby there. A female that is using as fuel only sugar water, how can they possibly do it? We're trying to understand the physiology of all of these things, but it's mind-blowing to say the least. All right. Now, here, what you see is every dot, the green and gray dots are the geographical location of a particular columnar cactus, of a particular saguaro cactus. And the red dot is the bat. In the video, you're going to see the bat is visiting certain cacti, but only certain cacti. All of the gray ones are not visited. All of the green ones are visited. But even in the green ones, you will see that there are some cacti, 5 or 6 cacti that the bat is really concentrating its activity on. And the others are only visited once or twice, and that's it. So here we go. Oops, sorry. Here we go. So that is the bat flying from cactus to cactus and feeding and feeding and feeding. And little by little, you can see the core areas where the bat is feeding, showing up and coming up and being very, very clear. This bat is focusing her feeding activity right here and only right there. Yes, she's visiting this one once, this one once, this one once, but that's all. So this year we wanted to go out there and try to understand in real time, what is it that these cacti have that the bats were focusing on that. But of course, COVID hit, and then we're gonna have to wait until next year, hopefully, to do that again. All right, so all of this information is pointing at recovery. Mexico contains about 80% of the species range, and 20 years of work are showing stability or growth and new colonies documented already. The roosts are legally and really protected. The landowners know that these are their partners, their friends. So they are protecting the roosts themselves. Education has taken root. So in 2013, we were able to celebrate and to announce to the public, together with the Ministry of the Environment, that the species was recovered, and it was the first mammal species in Mexico to leave the endangered species list because of our recovery program. And this is good news in conservation. Are very rare, unfortunately, but the media took it like crazy and it went all over the world. And the delisting has already occurred. We owe it to the donors, we owe it to the species, we owe it to ourselves, and we finally did it. The final chapter, the final chapter, I want to talk a little bit about the lesser long-nosed bats and their relationship to those amazing plants called the agaves. You may have some agaves in Michigan, I'm not sure. I've seen agaves in southern Canada, so you probably have 1 or 2 species there. But this is basically what agaves do. They accumulate sugar and accumulate sugar and accumulate sugar every year. And they invest every last ounce of those sugars in one single sexual reproductive event. They're going to have sex once and then they die. All right. So you can see on the right, the huge the huge investment of the plant that they're using all of the sugars to create this flowering stalk, opening up their arms and offering the flowers for the bats to come in. Bats are their most significant pollinator there. And the asexual part of the plant is down here. It's basically very limited. Even when the plant is big, it's very, very reduced compared to the big sexual organ. Basically, you're seeing big penises right there. So the relationship between bats and agaves can be described like this. Bats are looking for food and agaves are looking for sex, right? Okay. Now, why is all of this important? Well, look at this. Tequila. What else? Nothing more important than that, right? Well, let's look at the statistics of tequila production in 2014. Close to 1 billion tons of agave heads were harvested, of which 250, close to 250 million liters of tequila were produced. The economy of more than 50,000 families, Mexican families, is linked to tequila production, and that tequila sales represent about $2 billion for the Mexican economy. So it's really, really important. Mode of reproduction of agaves is clonal. They grow these clonal shoots under the parent plant, and that allows, or so they thought, the tequila producers, that they could use the clones to replant their fields. I went in 1994 to see the Tequila Regulatory Council and explain to them that they needed to invest for the agaves to have this sexual reproduction that will secure the future of the plant and have resistance to diseases, resistance to pests, ability to continue evolving, etc. They didn't pay attention. A friend of mine showed that over 200 million plants of agave are clones of only a handful of agaves. All of them are virtually and identical genetically. That is a perfect condition to create a massive disaster for the industry. So I went out there again in 2006 and I said, all it takes is for one disease to hit one plant and you will lose your plants because the plants are going to be sick because they're all the same. Pay attention. In 2011, the disease shows up. Thank you very much. I did not put it in. I swear it was not me. It showed up, and guess what? They come back and they say, oh, what was that thing about the plants and the agaves and the flowers and the bats? What was that thing that you were talking about? I said, well, yeah, but you're a little bit late, but let's see. So I created, together with the Tequila Interchange Project, a group of bartenders and restaurateurs and tequila producers, this label, the bat-friendly tequila, in which if you allow, oh, this is wrong, I'm sorry. If you allow 5% of agaves, that will help only 100 bats per hectare, not 300 that it says there. It's only 100 agaves, 100 bats that are gonna be benefited by 5% of the agaves flowering. The rest of the agaves you will use to produce tequila, but then the tequila coming from those fields is going to be labeled by the University of Mexico and the Tequila Interchange Project as a bat-friendly product. In November of 2016, we launched 300,000 bottles of bat-friendly tequila. You can see the hologram right there, and the company is right there. So finally, this is the companies that started. We now have several more, and there's more and more incorporating into the program every year. What you're seeing here is nothing short of historical. This is Don Salvador Rosales, owner of Tequila Cascahuin, seeing the first flowering stalks of agaves ever, because those fields have not allowed one agave to flower in 150 years. So once they go there and they harvest all of the agaves, we come back and the agaves are flowering, and we want to check whether the bats are really coming in and conducting pollination. And guess what? Of course the bats are coming in. Of course the bats are visiting the flowers. Of course the bats have not forgotten about this food plant. So again, this is a nice story for conservation. National Geographic gave us the cover a few years ago. It is a love story between bats and agaves, and it went out into the world, into different media, different outlets all over the place. Final chapter, and to close, coronavirus and COVID. You probably have heard so many scientists saying that bats gave us this. There is absolutely zero evidence that bats gave us this. There's really no question that SARS-CoV-2 is a human virus. More than 30 million people in the world have been infected by another human being, not by a bat. Maybe the first individual was infected by one animal. We don't know if it was a pangolin, if it was a civet. We don't know what it was. But that one individual was the first one that was affected by an animal. Everybody else, every other human being has been infected by a human being, not by an animal. Now, even, you know, when these people, the people who profit from scaremongering and crying wolf all the time, saying that bats are, because this is what they're saying to big outlets like NPR. They're saying that when a bat flies by you, you are exposed to the virus. When you have bats living in your house, you're exposed to the virus. When you go into a cave, you're exposed to the virus. That's absolute crap. There's absolutely zero evidence. That is absolutely not true whatsoever. They also said, and there's been many evolutionary biologists who have said this, there is a bat virus called SL-CoV that has 96% genetic similarity with SARS-CoV-2. All right. They say that because of that genetic similarity, SARS-CoV-2 had to come from that bat virus. I am sorry, but they're forgetting the most elementary genetics and evolutionary biology. It's as much as if we say that we are the closest relatives of chimpanzees and we share 99% of the genotype with chimpanzees, and therefore chimpanzees come from us or we come from chimps. That is absolutely not true. The truth is that chimps and us share a common ancestor, maybe 5-6 million years ago, and from there the branches diverging. That is the case. In the case of the virus, it's the same thing. The bat virus and the human virus share a common ancestor, together with the pangolin virus, with the civet virus, and many other coronaviruses in the world, share a common ancestor, and from there, different branches come down. Now, even if we wanted, if some crazy scientist there wanted to take that virus and put it in you, that virus would not be able to affect you, because the S protein, which is the crown, the little spikes on the outside of the virus, that is like the key to enter into the keyhole of the membrane, of the cell membrane of the animal that the virus wants to infect. Well, it turns out that the S protein, or the key that virus has, the bat virus has the wrong key for our cell walls. So it wouldn't be able to affect us. It wouldn't be able to infect us. So absolutely not true. Please erase that from your memory. Now, I want to tell you that the first line of defense against the next pandemic, because rest assured, there's more pandemics coming, is ecosystem and biodiversity conservation. And here I'm going to use this this illustration to tell you about the dilution effect, which is an ecological process that has been documented for a lot of different emerging infectious diseases. 77% of the emerging infectious diseases today respond to the dilution effect. What is the dilution effect? Picture for a second that you have a pristine ecosystem. Say, for example, the Huron Reserve that you have close to Lake Superior right there that I just learned about, that I'm dying to go and visit. That ecosystem is pristine and it has all its complement of plants and animals and their pathogens. They are all there, but they're diluted. They're in low densities, all of them, all right? Then humans come and encroach and start changing the ecosystem and simplifying the ecosystem, in which case the opportunistic species are going to grow like crazy, and their pathogens, of course, are going to use the opportunity and create an outbreak. In this case, I'm using this for the Lyme disease, which is the case in the northeastern of the United States, in which you have on the left the diluted condition, in which only a few mice are positive to Lyme disease, and the chances of a human being to get Lyme are fairly low. But then, of course, you lose deer and opossums and all of the other elements in the ecosystem. And of course, the deer mouse goes like crazy, and their population grow like crazy. And of course, by sheer probability, the pathogen for Lyme disease finds a lot more hosts, and bam, you have your outbreak right there. And of course, the chances of having a human being infected by Lyme disease is much, much greater. Well, this is exactly the same that lots of different researchers have shown that happens with hantavirus, with rabies, with leishmania, with trypanosoma, and dozens other emerging pathogens. Killing animals to feed on their bushmeat is a practice that human beings have engaged in since we've ever started being hominids. We've done that left and right all the time, and it's here to stay because there's more than 1 billion people that rely on bushmeat to ingest their protein. So this is going to be here to stay, and this is part of our job as biologists to make that a sustainable practice and make sure that it is legal and that it is sustainable, because it's here to stay. We cannot get rid of bushmeat consumption. Now, think for a second on your own consumption of meat. Where is it coming from? If it's chicken, chances are it's going to come from things like that. That is a perfect, very fertile ground for the next avian flu outbreak. You remember the avian flu of 2012, 1997, so on and so forth. Every few years, we get a new outbreak. Well, of course, look at that. That looks like that looks like Times Square in New Year's Eve. That is exactly the perfect setting for a new pathogen to come out. And we're completely oblivious. We go to the supermarket and we just take our clean chicken in a white tray covered with plastic. Oh yeah, I'm eating chicken today. We have absolutely no idea what's behind the production of those chickens. So please leave bats alone. Share bats are not to blame. Focus on the facts. Ecosystem degradation, unsustainable illegal bushmeat trade, and poor farm animal management are behind this pandemic. Please think, we humans tend to think in terms of culprits. Who is the culprit? Let's find the culprit and make him pay. Well, it's very easy. If you want to find the culprit, just go to the nearest mirror. And in the mirror, you're going to find the culprit. Each of us, we are culprits of this. To close, I want to summarize the lessons that I have learned. The recipe to do science and apply it into policy is very, very simple. The first one is, please get out of your comfort zone. So many of us professors are so happy working in our cozy lab, in our cozy offices, in our cozy classroom, in our cozy field sites, and we never look outside there. We never take the next step to make our research relevant for policy, relevant for people who want to learn what did we do. You need to get out of that comfort zone and start talking to the decision makers, lawmakers, governors of the state, leaders of community, landowners, etc. And then at first you're going to feel very awkward because you're outside of your comfort zone. Within a month or 2 months, you're going to see that your comfort zone has grown and you're already in your comfort zone again. That is the signal that you need to take to get out of your comfort zone again and make your sphere bigger, every time bigger, bigger, bigger. And you will see that you're going to find your comfort zone a lot more comfortable, a lot more rewarding, and ever growing. So that is the first lesson. The second lesson, please come down from the ivory tower. You don't know how many colleagues of mine I have seen that go to the nearest senator or the nearest secretary of the environment or governor, say, and they go, "Hi, I'm Dr. So-and-so, and I'm here to tell you how are you going to do your work." Well, that's a perfect way of closing a door in front of your nose. You have to realize that you're just one more human being. And if you come out like Jehovah coming back and telling everyone how to do things, you are closing opportunities for real conservation on the ground. You have to work this relationship with the landowners, with the decision makers, etc., little by little, step by step. Get to know them first. Knock on their doors. Chances are the first time they're going to shut their doors on your face. Well, go back again and go back again and go back again. Involve other sectors. Talk to the NGOs. Talk to other universities. Go talk to other government sectors and define a conservation and science agenda together. Everyone with a voice, everyone with a vote. Carry out the research and always keep contact with the other sectors. Whenever we get the permit, the research, the collecting permit, whatever you name it, we got it, so we forget about that and we go to the field. It's always wonderful. In my experience, they always react really well when you're in the field and you find something amazing, something funny, something incredible that you saw, and you take a picture and you email it to them. And you say, well, look at this, look at what I found. How about you come with me next time? It's really important and it opens up so many doors. You have to sit down with the decision makers and other stakeholders and discuss your findings. Publishing a paper is not the end. I have to paraphrase Winston Churchill here. Publishing a paper is not the end. Publishing a paper is not even the beginning of the end. Publishing a paper is the end of the beginning if you really want to have your research impact policy. You have to sit down with those decision makers and digest your messages into something that they can incorporate into the policy that they really want to incorporate. And also, if you're not part of the solution, you are part of the problem. I see so many of my friends and colleagues pointing fingers. Oh, look at what they're doing there. Look at what they're doing. Oh, they're destroying a cave over there. Oh, they're felling that tree over there. Those forests are destroying. I am sorry, my friends. If you are not part of the solution, you are part of the problem. It is time that you take fate, you take destiny in your hands. And I am not talking about only science, only biology. You guys have a huge thing happening in a little bit more than a month. And if you're not part of the solution, I'm sorry, my friends, but you're part of the problem. And please never, ever give up. Keep banging on doors, keep talking to people, keep questioning ways of doing things with a creative approach, with always an alternative in place. It's enough. We've had enough of people criticizing left and right and not having alternatives in their hands. It's time that if you're going to criticize something, you better have an alternative in your hand. If not, please shut up. If you want to follow me, that is my YouTube channel. We published one 3-minute long video on one particular species of bat every week, every Monday. We have over 200 now from Africa, Asia, Europe, the US, Mexico, Latin America, etc. I have my Instagram account, Twitter account, etc. And I also want to recognize my entire team. Everything I do, everything I told you today, I am able to tell you these stories because of this incredible group of people. They're all incredibly crazy, but I am convinced that the world belongs to the crazy people. And now I want to close thanking you for your patience and all of the funding agencies that have supported me over the years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Folks, I know we're after the hour, so if you have to leave, that's fine. But Rodrigo has agreed to stay for a few extra minutes to address questions. There was several in the chat we'll work our way through. But if you have a question, please open your video up, I guess, and we'll do it that way. Maybe raise your hand and we can go forward. So, Rodrigo, the first question comes from Jacob Burv, excuse me. Is ecotourism a big factor for jaguar conservation in Mexico?
I wish that it was, Jacob. Thank you very much for the question, because clearly it has the potential. The problem is that the jaguars are a lot more skittish than leopards are, or than any other cat. And it's very difficult to actually see them. The only place that I can tell you that I can guarantee that you're going to see a wild jaguar is in the Pantanal in Brazil. But in Mexico, it's very, very difficult. I cannot assure you that you're going to see them. However, of course, just bringing people, bringing tourists to the jaguar land is enough. And what we have done, and this is in Sonora again, is with, what's her name? The wife to Ted Turner, Sally something. She came to that place invited by us, and she brought a few of her friends, very wealthy people. They take care of themselves incredibly well. I told her, Sally, we're going to be on horseback tomorrow, 9 hours. So be ready, please, at 5 a.m. 4:30, she comes out with perfect makeup, perfect hair, perfect everything. And we go checking on camera traps. And my idea was to show them the pictures of that were taken the day before, the week before, etc., on a viewer right there that was reading the cards. She came up with the idea of, how about if I adopt this camera and I give you $5,000 for, and you send me some of those pictures that this camera takes. So there is a role for that is continuing right now. And this is a role for ecotourism to continue playing here. So clearly the ecotourism has a big role to play.
Great. Kind of following up on that, Tiffany Gasparini asked, have you learned any lessons from your efforts to create bat-friendly mezcal that could be applied to the jaguar-friendly beef initiative?
Well, some of the things that we have learned is that the big conglomerates, and this is no surprise, Stephanie, unfortunately, the big conglomerates and the big corporate firms are the most difficult to work with. You name it, tequila, mezcal, or beef, or whatever. Those have the biggest inertia, and they're not going to change unless the pressure comes from the consumer. It's actually the consumers that are driving this home and that are making the producers to make the change. So do not undervalue your power as an individual. You have a lot of power.
Okay, so this is what is not a question, but more of a comment, and I suspect you may know where I'm going, but so conservation is a dirty applied science, in the sense that sometimes there has to be things that you may not otherwise be interested, but to engage multiple stakeholders, it's absolutely critical that you get involved in ways that kind of meet them in the middle. And hunting potentially is one of those things that people are not interested in for a variety of reasons. But at the same time, there is oftentimes connections that can be made with hunting and conservation efforts. So with that, I mean, with the ram hunting, what can you speak more, I guess, to the community, the local communities, and how they view hunting? Are they seeing those practices actually benefiting not only the community but the ram?
Very good question. Thank you for that question. Of course, hunting, or I should say poaching, had been present in Tiburon Island from before. And, people, unfortunately, mostly from the United States, were coming to the little town of the Seri and giving them 2,000 pesos, 5,000 pesos, and they would take them across, shoot a ram and leave, and nobody would stop them. Once we started this program, my God, they took it to heart. And from then on, I can guarantee you there is no poaching in the island. One time in 98 or 99, I was arriving to the community and they were bringing a guy, a Seri community member, that was completely bloody like that. His clothes were bloody and everything. And I said, what happened to that poor guy? And they said, oh, he fell from the hill. He fell from the hill. Then I found the real story behind that. They found him poaching. They found him carrying a hunter, and they decided to teach him a lesson. I'm not condoning that, of course. As I'm not condoning hunting itself, I cannot put myself behind a rifle and shoot something. That's not me, but that's only me. But I have to recognize that that hunting, good hunting, can be an excellent conservation tool. So this program started in Tiburon, but it's now sprouted into Baja. Several areas of Baja with local landowners are doing the same things. You know, their hunts are not as expensive. The hunts in Baja Sur, in the Volcán de las Tres Vírgenes, in the north, the central part of the peninsula, they're auctioning their rams in about $60,000 to $70,000. But here it's 100,000, and still there's chances that we're going to continue growing. Now, at the same time, I thought that the big money maker was the Bighorn sheep. Absolutely not. I was completely wrong. The big money maker is the white-winged dove, because the white-winged dove is a lot more of a social hunt. You pay a lot less per dove, you kill a lot more doves, but the money goes to many more people, and the total amount that is brought in by Bighorn is nothing compared to the total amount that is brought in by white-winged dove hunting. So we have to be very creative in a way in which hunting, and I was on the media when I was opening the hunts, I was on the media being criticized as a hypocrite, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I opened a debate in public television saying, tell me, how else am I gonna have the possibility of the Seri people getting this amount of money for the cost of 2 bighorn lives out of a population of 650. And they stopped criticizing me. And they stopped criticizing those types of hunts. At the same time, I cannot tell you that we're gonna ever have any hunts on jaguars. That is out of the question.
Great, thank you for that. Another question on jaguars. This comes from Seri Gamez. I'm curious about coffee farms. What is the overall impact on jaguar populations? Do they make somewhat good habitat for jaguars and other wild cats?
Very good question too. I don't know if you know about this jaguar-friendly coffee that is being produced in Colombia and I think in Costa Rica. I am not sure exactly how it works. We have not gone into that direction, mostly because the coffee in Mexico is not very closely connected with the biggest areas of jaguar, which is the Yucatan Peninsula and the Mayan Rainforest. Coffee, you have to be in the mountains, so we have not gone there, but rest assured, we are working to do bat-friendly sugar, bat-friendly rice for crying out loud, and jaguar-friendly products, including chiltepín, the little wild chilies. They're harvesting wild chilies in areas where the jaguars are, so we're giving them the label. And again, it's actually the consumer that is going to guide that process.
Great, thank you, Rodrigo. Let's see here. Next question. And this is about drones. So I'm assuming for both jaguars and bighorn sheep. How do you feel about the use of drones for field observations? Do the benefits outweigh the negatives, or do you believe that drones habituate wildlife to foreign objects in their near vicinity?
Depending on the use of the drone, but I am all for after running those helicopter surveys for 6 or 7 years in the desert with no doors on the helicopter, pumped full of Dramamine to not throw up, and just being tied like that, and look, my God, drones are more than welcome. Now, you run the risk of overworking the drones if you really want to go look at the Bighorn. But if you're just running a survey, it's a lot less intrusive than a helicopter, and you can have multiple drones going over one mountain like that, mountain range. So I am all for using drones, and I have a proposal before the head of the wildlife department right now to use drones next year for the Bighorn surveys. For jaguars, it's not going to be easy because it's very difficult to fly a drone in the rainforest. And I myself, I'm not a drone pilot at all by any means.
So that's it from the chat. I guess as we're kind of close up here, if anybody else has any final questions, feel free to open your video up and raise your hand, and we'll address them that way. I do have to close down here in a few minutes, but just a real quick question, because I know there's several grad students here, you know, and I kind of alluded to it a little bit with hunting question, but, you know, conservation involves a lot of stakeholders, everybody from the locals to government officials to individuals that may run tequila plantations or Bacardi or whatever the different groups that you're getting involved with. How do you negotiate those stakeholders and be effective to actually do real conservation?
I am not going to say that that's easy, Cody. It's not easy at all. And depending on the groups that are involved, it's always very tricky. And there is a very highly respected ecologist in Mexico, Jose Sarucan, who has said many times that the conservation professional has to be knowledgeable in not only ecology and genetics and evolution, etc., but also in social sciences, in economics, and in political science, and be open to handle, to juggle many different social sectors. I have to tell you that Mexico has a lot of indigenous groups. It's not easy, and I work with many. It's not easy to work with them. It's not easy to work with them. You know, one biologist with one project, one 3 or 5 or 10 year long project, cannot erase 400 years of abuse and paternalism from the government. And so many students, so many biologists, so many professors go out and do a study in Indian land, and oh yeah, we're going to bring back the results. We're going to tell you everything about, and they never see us again. Or if they see us, we come and we give a talk, a 1 hour talk to the community, and the kids are there throwing popcorn at the screen and looking, oh yeah, that's a nice thing. And they are left with nothing. That has to be erased from the table. We have to really engage with them and work with them and bear the weight of those 400 years. Unfortunately, I have been accused of stealing money from the community because I try to work with them for the conservation of jaguars. And I have to come back and explain to them that I did not, and start from zero, start at a very low level. They are the legitimate owners of the land that we are living in, and we have to respect that right. And we have to come back and try to make friends, and it's not easy, and it's not always successful. I have not been successful in many cases too.
Great. Well, I think unless anybody else has any questions, I think we'll end the seminar. And I appreciate Rodrigo for taking the time to come talk about the variety of projects that you're working on, and how, you know, to go about working in a very diverse landscape and community, and addressing stakeholder issues. So I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Cody. Thank you for the invitation. I had fun. Thanks for the great questions. Cyria and your professor, I forget her name. I look forward to connecting again next week, all right?
Thank you, Rodrigo. Appreciate it.
Gracias, Rodrigo. Un gusto.
Igualmente. Chao, Cyria.
Chao.